good to be here. I'm going grey in a beard as well. I don't know anyone who's gotten balder younger than me. How old was it? When I committed, I was like 20, I reckon, 21. Yeah, not good. Get bagged out all the time, but it does bother me. How we going? I'm going to tell you a story. Journalists preaching on journeys. I've got a journey that just sticks in my mind that I just can't. I don't think I'll ever forget. I was about 7 or 8 years of age. Went for a bushwalk with my family. So I've got 2 brothers, an older one, a younger one. My younger one's like a mammoth. He's huge. And I've got an older sister. And what Mount Field, probably had to be a Mount Field in Tasmania. It's beautiful, isn't it? And we went out, and the plan was to go for a 2-hour bushwalk. So we get our things together and off we go. We sign in, like before you go to bushwalk, you need to like register and sign in, so you make sure you get back on time, all that sort of stuff, what walk you're doing, how many of you. So we did that and off we go, and 2 hours in, we're like still in the thick of it. Like, surely it must just be around the corner. And we keep walking and walking, an hour past, and it turns out, I'm going to just cut to the end, instead of a 2-hour walk, we took the wrong trail. We went on a 12-hour bushwalk. I'm 7 or 8, guys. Like, this is hard yakka. And we didn't have food, and if you know me, I like my food, so that's a bit of a problem. And things did not go to plan. My sister, about 8 hours in, she falls over, and she hurts her wrist. Turns out when we got back, it was broken, so she broke her wrist. We get in about 8 p.m. that night. It was dark, and I remember my parents talking. We knew there was 1 hour to go. We recognised we had the map, all that sort of stuff. And at 7 o'clock, like, do we stay in the hut? Like, do we just stay here, or do we, like, everyone's just exhausted beyond measure, but we kept on going. And we got home safe and sound. My sister went and got her arm checked out. But how's that for a story? How's that for a journey, hey? Now, I'm sure we've got our own. I've got some, obviously, like you, personal ones as well. But it's easy to sing It Is Well when life is going well, when you're ticking the boxes, when things are moving along swimmingly, when you're talking to God, your prayers are being answered, you're kicking goals at work, the kids, if you've got kids, they're kicking goals, they're not talking back to you. Like, that's great, it is well, right? Things are good. But you probably know the story. It is well. Look, I'll break down some of the things that it is well when it's going well, but how do we go when things aren't going well? How do we go when things are out of our control? How do we go with saying it is well under financial pressure, under emotional and mental health? You might be hitting a time of depression, under friendship insecurity. You might be moving house, moving job. There might be things out of your control happening around you, like your kids. And you go, how do I say it is well here? You might be preaching on Sunday, reports are due on Friday, you're out every single night, and you say, how am I going to do it? But in that moment, with and through God, we actually get to say, you know what? It is well. Horatio Spafford is the author of the song, It Is Well. Horatio Spafford lived in Chicago in 1871. He was actually quite wealthy, but all his wealth, like he had a fire in Chicago at the time, and all his wealth was gone. That same year, he lost his son. His son passed, so he had a pretty bad year. And we fast forward 2 years later, 1873, his wife takes his 4 daughters out on a boat trip. I actually don't know whether they were heading to a destination or whether it was more leisure, but they were on a boat trip, and their boat collided with another boat. And sadly, all 4 daughters died. And Horatio gets the news, gets the telegram from his wife, and he heads out. And he hops on a boat and he heads out, and the captain of the boat he's on says, it's around this place that the boat sank and you lost your daughters. And it is there where the lyrics were formed. It is there within his grief, within his pain, within that super sad circumstances where he was able to pen those lyrics and say, it is well with my soul. I've got 2 kids. I've got a wife. I couldn't imagine the pain he was in. I couldn't imagine a worse situation. And it's only through God, where we can get to that place to say, it is well. It is well. And if I'm honest, I would kind of like prefer not to have any valleys in my life. I would kind of prefer not to have any storms, not to have any heartache or challenges or hardship. But Jesus never promised an easy life. We on? Yes, good. All right, John 16:33 says, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world." It wasn't like, in this world you won't have trouble if you follow me. In this world everything's going to be perfect. In this world, no. In this world you're going to have things that are tough. Faith is not an immunity to suffering. Christians experience grief, uncertainty, dependence on other things other than ourselves, sickness, heartbreak, disappointment, just like everyone else, just like Jesus did. And following him doesn't remove us from the realities of this world. Sometimes people become exhausted because they think that their struggles, they might have failed God, or, things aren't going to plan. Where are you, God, in this space? Yet, through Scripture, we can find comfort in knowing that men and women of God who achieve great things also experience a lot of hard challenges and things. So by no means has God left you, and by no means have we failed just because we're going through a storm. The question isn't whether challenges will come. The question is how we're going to respond when they do come. How do we get to a place, regardless of our circumstances, where we can still declare, "It is well with my soul"? Today I want to suggest that we don't get there by avoiding the storms or controlling the outcomes or having all the answers. We arrive there by keeping our eyes on God, trusting the one who walks with us, and surrendering what we cannot control. All right, I got 3 points, but I'm going to call it 2. Like, this point, it's just a preface point. All right, you won't find it as well by focusing on the storm. I just need to get this out there. I need to get this off my chest, and it might help us to set us up for a few things. But are there any people who take their issues, their health issues, to ChatGPT or Google? This is a safe space. Thank you, Aiden. Just you and I. Man, thank you. All right. Sarah, why wasn't your hand up? Good, thank you. I'm in the gym the other day, and someone had my dumbbells. Like, I was using those, and then he takes them. Anyway, so I got the heavier one, right? And I'm doing this, and I'm feeling great. I go, I'll just do 2 more, and then I hit this pain in the back of my shoulder. Oh man, it was real bad, and I'm in lots of pain, and then I still push on. I've got to act tough, right? Like, I just got here. I can't leave after 5 minutes, so I still do my workout, get home. Anyway, I'm in pain, and then when you got a shoulder in pain, you put pressure on it, you lie down in bed, it just feels like daggers are pushing through it, if you know. So what do? ChatGPT, right? Obviously, hey, what's going on? This is the diagnosis, this is what I've done. I wasn't dying. There's a chance, but I wasn't dying, so that's all good. But it's easy to laugh, and it's good to laugh, but we can do the same thing with our own life. Some things happen, and before we know it, we're thinking, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if the worst case scenario? What if it gets worse? We allow our minds to run far ahead of where we actually are, and suddenly the storm becomes bigger and bigger, because that's ultimately what we're focusing on. The journey of life can be like that. If you're like me, it's easy to get bogged down. I can have a wuss. I can get salty. Oh, God. Oh, man. And to give us some comfort in that situation, I've been there. Many people in the Bible have been there before. And God still uses us. God still uses them. I like Peter. Peter's an example of someone who focused on the storm in Matthew 14. Jesus calls him, come, if you want to walk on water, Peter, come out here. Peter, what a brave guy. He did it. He went out and he walked on water. And as long as Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he was walking on water. The moment he paused and looked around at the distractions and focused on the waves and the winds, he started to sink. Fear took over, and the storm still stayed there. That's what can happen to us. God calls us to trust him, but somewhere along the journey, our attention can shift. We start looking at the size of the waves, the uncertainty ahead, the challenges around us, and the what ifs begin to take over. and the storm suddenly gets bigger. Now, you know what? I just find it crazy in life. Jesus can stop the storm like that. He could have stopped the storm already. Like, he chose to walk through the storm. It's Jesus. Prior to the guys on the boat, Jesus is praying in the storm by himself, getting absolutely hammered. Storms are there sometimes for us to learn and get from. On my walk, I don't talk about the beautiful sun shining and the birds singing the first 2 hours of the walk. I go, hey, can you believe it? It's through that where we can grow through the storms. But back to Peter. Even as Peter sank, Jesus didn't abandon him. Jesus didn't let him sink. He reached out, he grabbed his hand and said, "You of little faith." Peter's problem wasn't the storm, it was where he was looking. And often in our own lives, peace isn't found when we're focusing on the storm. It's found when we keep our eyes on Jesus in the midst of it. Like all people, suffering through the journey of life is going to come. And I'm not saying it's self-inflicted. I'm not saying that, storms are there because you're focusing on them. Storms can come whether they're in our control or out of it. But don't be deceived. The devil's job is to make distractions around you. He's to make the scary things look scary and the dark things look dark. And if we focus on those things, we all of a sudden don't feel that peace that God causes us to have. So, keeping our eyes on God, when we focus on the storm, it can look like our anxiety over trust, control over surrender, fear over faith, self-reliance over dependence on God, and fixating on circumstances instead of focusing on God. I've done that before, many a times. What if? But this might. I'm looking at my journey from a worldly perspective rather than leaning in on God who loves me, cares for me, and he made the cosmology. He made the world that we walk on today. He made my eyes see, my lungs breathe, my ears hear, and here, me, Frank, sometimes struggles to trust him. I can focus on the storm. I'm like an ant to God. What I've learned that in challenging situations reveal what's happening in our hearts. My attitude doesn't change God's faithfulness. My attitude doesn't change God's promises. My attitude doesn't change God's plan. But it does affect how I walk through the journey. Having the correct attitude and the right focus on God, not on the storm, can get to a point where it is well with my soul. So I've got 2 points today to try and help us get to that point of how do we get to it as well in heartache. And as Tam prayed, like that, going through the valleys, going through the storms in life is inevitable on your journey of life. And some of us, the odds are, maybe going through a storm right now. And it might be big, it might be small, and some of us will. But I think there are 2 things that I'm going to be focusing on today: trusting in God and surrendering ourselves to him. So there are 2 points. Spoiler alert, you'll find out in 5 minutes. Anyway, but just sort of a breakdown of like what is the difference of trust and surrender. Trust is an attitude of the heart and the mind, and it's believing that God is good, faithful, and knows what he's doing. That is trust. Let me get there. I'm one behind. Yeah? Bingo. Cool. Surrender is the act of trust. Because I trust, I'm letting go of my will. Trust answers the questions whether you believe in God, but surrender is the action of showing it. You can trust without surrendering, but I don't think you can surrender without trust. All right, let's get on to it. So, point 2, you get to it as well by trusting in the one who walks with you. We can easily struggle to trust God at times. We like to know the plan. We like to know the outcome. We like to have some level of control over what comes next. Yet so often in life, God has a bit of a habit to ask us to do things where we've got no idea what could happen. We've got no control over. In fact, I feel very equipped, unqualified, and that makes no sense, God. I've still got bills to pay. If I leave this job here, how's that going to work out? But what God does is he basically forces us to trust him and to surrender to him. The challenge is that we only see a small part of the journey, where God sees the whole picture. We see today's problem. God sees tomorrow's provision. We see the valley, where God sees the destination. We see what is right in front of us, where God sees what's around the corner. That's why trusting in God isn't about having all the answers. It's about believing that the one leading us is good and faithful and knows the way even when we don't. I love Psalm 23. If you haven't read it, we're going to read it at the moment, but Psalm 23 to me is just a picture. If you're a painter, someone paint me Psalm 23 for me. I just love it. It just reminds me of the unconditional, lavish love God has for us. Yeah. It's so deep and so rich, and we're just going to sit here for a minute and then read it. It starts with, "The Lord is my shepherd, I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows, he leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along the right paths, bringing honour to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honour me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all of my days, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever." What a great reminder for life, especially when things aren't going well, especially when things aren't going to plan. You're unsure, you're challenged, you're feeling weak, helpless, you're feeling like there's no hope. That's a reminder that God is going to take care of us. I love it how, to finish up, he pursues you. He pursues you. Even when we choose the wrong way, even when we do focus on the storm, he pursues you. As I mentioned with Peter, he's not going to abandon you. He's not going to allow you to sink. Sometimes in order to get to that destination, we do need to go through the valley on our journey of life. It's actually what happens in that space, like I said earlier, is where we can reminisce and where we can learn and where we can grow from those spaces. God doesn't remove the valley, but he does promise his presence in it. He doesn't shout directions from a distance, but he's there walking alongside of us. Whilst the valley might be scary, it's not scary to God. Whilst the valley might be unknown of what's ahead, God knows what's ahead. Whilst you might feel your enemy is surrounding you in that space, God gives you refuge and a table where you can eat and restore yourself. Whilst the times you can feel like life is hopeless and worst case scenario has been into effect, the good shepherd, our God, will protect us. We need to ensure that in times of difficulty, we keep our eyes and ears focused on him. Too easy we can get sidetracked by the distractions. It's hard, but we are called to trust God. We don't understand the plan, and it doesn't make sense, and that's where the trust kicks in. Peace is not found in knowing the path, it's found in knowing the shepherd. Without trusting in God during challenging times, kind of like what Dan was talking about, the Israelites, they're walking around the desert, they're not knowing where to go, it's trying to get to a destination in the darkness. They're trying to find answers in other gods that they're making up. But it's through trusting, you know what, God, this doesn't look good. We're outnumbered here and you want us to go and take that land? This doesn't make sense, but God, I'm going to trust in you. You won't get to your destination without trusting in God. Third and finally, you arrive at it as well through surrender. We just read Psalm 23. Psalm 22. What a riveting one that one is. Who's read? You might have read Psalm 22. It starts like this: my God, why have you forsaken me? Well, riveting, right? This is David, the same writer, by the way. Historians, predict that it's likely that David wrote Psalm 22 when he was a fugitive on the run from Saul. He did nothing wrong, but Saul, the king of the Israelites, was quite jealous of him, and he's having to go to save his life, and he's running away from him. And things are pretty tough. Psalm 22 doesn't get better to start with. He goes on to describe how David is feeling abandoned by God, being mocked and ridiculed by others, physical suffering and weakness, enemies surrounding him like wild animals, crying out for rescue. Here's my list, God. Here's my list of everything that's not working. Where are you, God? This journey I'm on, I thought it was meant to be better. Well, in John, we read earlier, John 16, that wasn't written yet, but I think David realised, John took notes that life is not great necessarily just because you believe and you follow God. But I love how Psalm 22 finishes. It finishes by declaring God's faithfulness. It finishes by declaring that he will praise God publicly, even though things are super tough. That all nations will eventually worship the Lord. And in verse 31, this is the last verse in the chapter, it says, they will proclaim his righteousness, declaring to a people yet unborn, he has done it. What a remarkable testament, but an honest reminder to us. I can feel like David at times. God, here's my whinge list. Here's everything that's not going well, whether it be big or small. God's wanting to listen. He cares. What's going on, God? I feel weak. I feel alone. There's no way out, no answers, no questions. But this is not a foreign place for a lot of people in the Bible. Saying it is well doesn't mean things need to be perfect. Doesn't mean it has to make sense. David gets to a point of declaring God's faithfulness by surrendering to him. He gets to a place, regardless of his circumstance, it is well because it is God who is for him. David shows us that it is well isn't something we achieve through control. David doesn't surrender by pretending that everything is fine, quiet. Quite the opposite. He voices his pain and confusion. He brings his complaints directly to God and admits his helplessness. At this point in time, David was anointed by Samuel the prophet to be king of Israel, which is a pretty big deal. And David was one of Saul's advisors, like his right-hand man, and he went out to battle and won quite often and was really liked by the Israelites. And as David's running from Saul, Saul got jealous, and as David's running from Saul, he had two opportunities to kill Saul, two. But he surrendered his timing and allowed God to time. He surrendered the way he was going to be deemed to be king and allowed God to do that. He didn't take it into his control. He allowed God to determine the steps, even when he had opportunities to do so. Another act of surrender is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These guys, the king at the time built this big gold statue and said, just bow down to it when you hear the trumpets and all the music and all that sort of stuff. And these three men said, no chance, I'm not doing that. So Nebuchadnezzar got pretty furious and angry and said, I'm going to throw you into this furnace of fire and you're going to die. And the boys respond, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you have set up. Verse 18, but even if he does not, even if God doesn't save us, even if we die and turn to ash, we're going to surrender the outcome and we're going to follow God. We're going to surrender what's not in our control. You can do what you want. If we die, we die. That's fine. If we don't, we don't. But I just want to let you know we're surrendering it all and giving it to God. We're not going to let fear or circumstance change our devotion to God. I'm going to surrender to him and stay faithful whatever comes next. Sometimes we forget that the God we serve, literally sleeps through the storms on the boat. He's in the boat sleeping while the crew's going, we're going to die. We forget that he can walk on the storms. Surrender gives the outcome to God. It's not denying the storm. It's not pretending that the storm doesn't hurt. It's not claiming to understand everything. But it's trusting that God remains faithful in the middle of it. Proverbs 3, 5 and 6, something I grew up with. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him and he will make your paths straight. When we live a life trusting in God and surrendering to him, our prayer becomes, Lord, I release what I cannot control. Lord, I trust you with my future. Lord, even when I don't understand, Lord, even if the outcome isn't what I want, I will believe that you are good. And somewhere in that space, we discover, somewhere in that place of surrender, we discover that it is truly well with our soul. The band can come up now, please. I want to bring it back to where we started. Trust says, God, I know you can. Surrender is saying, regardless of the outcome of whether God chooses a different path, I'm going to be obedient to you and follow you regardless. Peter trusted God to get out of the boat, but failed to surrender as he looked at the storm. David surrendered to God when he went from a shepherd to a fugitive to a king. And as I said earlier, he allowed God's timing and God's way and God's method take over, even though he had multiple opportunities to. Trust believes God's promises and surrender waits for his timing. It is well comes when we do both. As we close, I want to remind us that we cannot fight the spiritual battle of the journey when things get hard, uncertain. We can't find this spiritual battle with worldly things. When life becomes overwhelming, our natural tendency is to try and fix it. Maybe worry more, think harder, try and think another way first, just to try and get some control. Yet the peace we are searching for isn't found here on this earth. Worship is one way we can fight this battle. It nourishes the soul and it keeps our eyes and heart focused on God, realigns us. It lifts our eyes from the challenge of the journey right in front of us and back to God. It can remind us that he is bigger and greater than the circumstances, the fears, the questions that we don't even have answers for. When we keep our eyes fixed on him, we really get to sit by the meadows of peace, as mentioned in Psalm 23. We get to sit there. We get to be restored. And in my own experience, like to me, worship is one of the hardest things when we go through a storm. I've prayed more than I've sung in the storm as things go happen. Even this song earlier, brings tears to my eyes. Not because anything's wrong, but just because, God, you are just so faithful. It's a message of love, of God's faithfulness to us, to you. It's a message of hope. It's a message of grace. It's a message of strength. But it's in those seasons where I encourage us to come to him, to fight this battle with God as our number one choice. We're about to sing It As Well, and I encourage you to bring whatever's weighing on your heart. You might be in the midst of a storm, and I want to remind you that God's got a destination waiting for you. I'm here to remind you that God is walking with you. He's not calling from a distance, just come over here. I'm over this way. He's walking next to you. He's got all that you need. You don't have to have everything figured out. Life doesn't have to be perfect to be able to say it as well. Because he is the great I am. Not only is he overcome the world, he made it. I reckon sometimes God would laugh at me when I come to him some of my worries and issues. Like, that's one of your worries? Come on, man, let's go. Like, pull your socks up, let's go, fight another day. Because it's nothing to him. This message can come across sombering, but it's anything but. It's actually quite encouraging. It's quite uplifting that we can find confidence in knowing that, hey, it is well. God has overcome. And it's through trusting in him and surrendering where we can really find peace in that. I've had a crazy week. I've been out every single night this week till like 8 p.m. I wake up at 5 and my day starts, and I don't have much, and I've got reports due on Friday, and I'm preaching on Sunday, and I'm preaching on it as well, hey? Like, I haven't really started reports come Monday. Hopefully my boss doesn't listen to this. But they got done. The sermon, it got done. But what a sermon to write. It is well. It's going to work out. God's got this. I'm going to put my faith in him. I'm going to put my trust in him and surrendering to him. Yeah, right, thanks, church.